Marvel franchise has brought more joy to millions of fans around the world than any series since the heyday of the Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings movies. Welcome back to FilmShack. Today, we prepared for you the 10 most rewatched scenes from Marvel movies. Number 10. Thor arrives in Wakanda.
Bring me Thanos!
Towards the end of Marvel's Phase 3, Thor was becoming arguably the front-running Avenger after the wild success of Thor Ragnarok, which showed Hela, Thor's evil sister, as the goddess of death, destroying his hammer. Thor knew he had to obtain a new and arguably even more powerful weapon in order to defeat Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, and enlisted Rocket Raccoon and Groot to assist. Once retrieving his new axe, Stormbreaker, Thor used it to summon the Bifrost and return to Earth to fight alongside his fellow Avengers. The directors also decided to bring back the original Avengers theme from Avengers, assembled for this jaw-dropping entrance which fits perfectly with this amazing moment. Number 9. I Can Do This All Day.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
This particular moment is actually two moments, as there are a bit of divide over the specific scenes while the sentiment was an all-in. Captain America, Chris Evans, has earned himself a bit of a catchphrase in the MCU with his declaration of, "I can do this all day," in situations where that seems impossible. The first one, in Captain America, the First Avenger, particularly stands out because it's not Captain America who says it, but Steve Rogers before he becomes Captain America. The skinny young man is clearly not able to keep it up, but he's determined not to back down. It's an inspiring moment. It's also a moment that's equally as inspiring decades later, when in Civil War, he's up against Iron Man and still unwilling to back down. Number 8. The Snap.
You should have gone for the head.
It shouldn't have been a surprise. We knew going in that there was more to the story after Avengers Infinity War. We knew going in that the heroes were at something of a disadvantage when it came to dealing with Thanos, Josh Brolin. And yet, even until the last possible moment, we thought that the Avengers would pull out the victory. Who didn't scream with relief when Thor, Chris Hemsworth, landed that blow with Stormbreaker? And yet, the snap still happened. Thor should have aimed for the head, but before we even had a chance to process it, Thanos snapped his fingers and our beloved heroes turned to dust. You could hear a pin drop in the theater at that moment, and we will never be the same. Number 7. You step out this door.
Stay in here, you're good. I'll send your brother to come find you, but if you step out that door, you are an Avenger.
In many ways, a good chunk of the MCU is made up of origin stories, and we're not talking about the films that are very clearly so. No, even inside the more established team-ups, there are smaller origins, and perhaps the best of them all, as well as one of the best moments in the MCU, comes in Avengers: Age of Ultron, when Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, Elizabeth Olsen, becomes an Avenger. This scene is significant for good reason. Wanda was, before this moment, not a hero. She is in many ways responsible for some of the events in Age of Ultron, and with everything having gone totally wrong, she could have easily just hidden away in fear. Instead, Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner, doesn't judge her or question her motives. He gives her a choice: stay here until safety comes, or step up to be not just a hero, but an Avenger. Wanda steps out that door and becomes a hero, something that matters years later when she actually manages to thwart Thanos temporarily in Avengers Infinity War. So there's no surprise how this scene ended up on our list. Number 6. Cap's sacrifice.
I gotta put her in the water.
Please, don't do this. We have time. We can work it out.
Right now I'm in the middle of nowhere. If I wait any longer, a lot of people are gonna die.
When scientist Dr. Abraham Erskine asks Steve why he wants to participate in World War II, despite his various health problems, Steve responds that it's not because he wants to kill Nazis, but because he doesn't like bullies. This, along with further examples of his nobility, is ultimately what convinces Erskine to have Rogers be subjected to a serum that would turn him into a genetically enhanced soldier, as he recognizes that Rogers wouldn't take his newfound strength for granted. In other words, he would continue to maintain his heroic morals, thus making him not a perfect soldier, but a good man. This especially comes into play during the film's emotionally devastating finale, where Cap fights Hydra leader Johann Schmidt, aka the Red Skull, on board his airship, the Valkyrie. The fight ultimately culminates in Schmidt seemingly being destroyed by the mystical power source known as the Tesseract. Emphasis on seemingly, as we eventually found out in Avengers Infinity War. Unfortunately, Steve then discovers that the ship's landing controls have been damaged, and to make matters worse, it's on a direct course to New York, full of pilotable atomic bombs. With no feasible way of safely landing the ship, Steve decides to crash it into the Arctic to prevent the loss of millions of lives, even if it means that it'd come at the cost of his own. Thus, he ends up sharing one last conversation with his key ally and love interest, Peggy Carter, over the radio, as he directs the Valkyrie away from New York. To call Steve's goodbye to his best girl gut-wrenching would be a massive understatement, especially with Steve admitting to her that he's gonna need a rain check on the planned date they had to go dancing together. As she fights back tears, Peggy gives him a time and a date later that week at the Stork Club, resulting in Steve remarking that he still doesn't know how to dance and that he'd hate to step on her feet. And it's during that last comment that his radio cuts out, signifying that the ship has crashed. Number 5. Hulk catches Iron Man. The first battle where fans saw the entirely newly assembled Avengers fight side by side was the battle against the Chitauri, Thanos' army that was sent to help Loki conquer Earth. The story made it seem as though Tony Stark was going to sacrifice his life to send a shield nuke through the wormhole created by the Tesseract and blow up the Chitauri mothership. Even though Tony narrowly escapes the explosion and starts falling back to the portal, it seemed unlikely that he would cross over to Earth in time. But once he did, gravity set in and Iron Man was plummeting through the air. Thor was limbering up ready to catch Iron Man, but Hulk jumps in to save the day. Number 4. Killmonger's last words.
Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage.
Here we have one of the most powerful moments in Black Panther and the MCU overall. After having beaten Killmonger, Michael B. Jordan, Black Panther, T'Challa, Chadwick Boseman, takes his cousin to see a Wakandan sunset and offers to try and save him from death. It's a huge moment for T'Challa, who is learning how to be a king and a hero, with compassion as well as strength. However, it's Killmonger who teaches him one final lesson. Killmonger doesn't want to be saved. He doesn't want to be imprisoned like his ancestors before him, people that Wakanda abandoned. Just bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage, he says with his final words. Number 3. A fractured friendship. Captain America Civil War finds the Avengers conflicted over the Sokovia Accords, which are put into motion by the United Nations to regulate their activity in the wake of recent disasters that they've been connected to. Most specifically, Captain America opposes the Accords due to how much it would hinder their efforts to save people, while Iron Man supports them because of the survivor's guilt that he's begun to develop, especially after everything that happened when he created Ultron. And if that wasn't enough, the group is then torn apart further by a terrorist plot masterminded by Helmut Zemo, a man who lost his family during the events of Avengers: Age of Ultron's finale. Cap and Iron Man do manage to settle their differences long enough to go after him, but then Zemo unleashes his ace in the hole, in the form of a mission report from December 16, 1991, that he has repeatedly asked for the entire film. Said mission report involves an incident in which the Winter Soldier intercepted a case of super soldier serum from a crashed car. And as it turns out, that car was being driven by Howard Stark, who the Winter Soldier promptly kills before doing the same to Howard's wife Maria. Thus, when Tony promptly lashes out at Bucky for killing his parents, he's held back by Cap and realizes the devastating truth that his longtime ally knew about it all along. This, of course, leads to the film's final action sequence, in which Cap and Bucky find themselves facing a vengeful Tony. It goes without saying that this is truly one of the most devastating moments in the history of the MCU. Just when you think that it will all be okay and that Cap and Tony will overcome their conflict, one pivotal reveal changes everything and permanently impacts the friendship between the MCU's top two leads. Number 2. Lifting Thor's hammer.
Come on, Cap.
This scene was revealed slightly earlier than Avengers Age of Ultron's premiere in the summer of 2015. At San Diego Comic-Con 2014, fans got an early look at some footage from the movie, where the Avengers take turns to try and lift Thor's hammer. Some fans were disappointed that Captain America was seemingly unworthy to wield the hammer, though it can now, thanks to the events of Avengers Endgame, be assumed that Captain America simply stopped lifting the hammer, an idea that Avengers Age of Ultron director Joss Whedon presented when a fan at SDCC 2015 challenged him on Steve Rogers' unworthiness. Number 1. We are Groot.
We are Groot.
Ultimately, there was one moment from the MCU that overwhelmingly was chosen as the top. In Guardians of the Galaxy, with the team facing certain death, as the damaged Dark Asher hurtles towards Xandar, Groot, Vin Diesel, extends himself to create a shield around them. It's clear to them that this act will save them, but kill Groot in the process, prompting Rocket, Bradley Cooper, to ask him why he's doing this, why he is sacrificing himself. The answer? We are Groot. It's a play on Groot's language, which relies heavily on him saying, I am Groot. But by saying we are Groot, even if most of us have no idea what Groot is really saying most of the time, there's no mistaking it here. They aren't just a team, they're a family. Perhaps that's the real message of the whole MCU. We may come from different places and different worlds, but when we come together, we become one. We are all Groot. We would like to invite you to share your opinion with us. Do you agree with our list? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications bell. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye!